Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Commonwealth Disabled People Forum side event meeting at the CoSP14 on showcasing success of the Commonwealth Disabled People Forum online disability equality training. My name is Sarah Kamau from Kenya. I act as the chair for Commonwealth Disabled People Forum, and I am also a member of the board of the United Disabled Persons of Kenya in Kenya. Welcome to this course, and I want to now go to the point. You can go to the next one.
Okay.
Richard.
Yeah.
Why we have this? Yeah, it's up now.
Okay.
Why are we having this meeting? Because the Commonwealth Disabled People Forum is showcasing their recently completed course on disability equality, which was delivered in 14 modules from the 19th of February to the 28th of May. This training replaced in-person training that was scheduled to take place in Rwanda at Chogom, but that meeting was canceled. And so this training took place online to cater for that. The training also had views from people who are involved, especially who helped us in the funding and creation and delivery of the course. That is the Commonwealth, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, together with IDA. We also got, during the course, views of participants that were very important for us to be able to move forward in the way that most of them felt they needed the issues addressed. The course also had a question and answer part, which the participants were able to speak to by putting in their answers and sending them online for assessment. And also the course also held a wider discussion. You can go back one more slide.
One back. There you go.
Back. Yeah, the wider discussions introduced by speakers from IDA and FCDO on capacity building and the bridge program.
That's later in this meeting.
Yeah, that will be done later. Yeah.
Okay.
So that is the reason why we have this course, to showcase how this training took place and how it has benefited DPOs and members of those DPOs in the 54 Commonwealth countries and the participants that were there. We'll talk about the modules of the course, modules of CDPF Disability Equality Online course. We had 14 modules in general, and they were delivered by experienced leaders across the Commonwealth. The modules included one, models and thinking about disability, and this touched on the different ways that people look at disability, from the medical model to the social model and the human rights model. And the second topic was about the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Sustainable Development Goals and how they impact on disabled people human rights. We also had a health module which focused on mental health and COVID-19 and how countries had responded to the pandemic, given that health is a very vital role to help persons with disabilities to be able to function in society fully. The fourth module was about innovation and focused on improving access and assistive devices. We know that these access and devices for persons with disabilities are very key in ensuring that they are able to be part and parcel of the society without being left behind at any cost. So that taught a lot on how to bring those on board and to adopt even technology to be able to make access and assistive devices useful for persons with disabilities. The fifth was on trade, which focused on improving livelihoods and employment, where we know that persons with disabilities really require a life. They need support. They have assistants who have to keep assisting them, and therefore focusing on their livelihood and how they can get employment and work was quite useful. The sixth module was on environment, which focused on the impact of humanitarian situations, Article 11 of the CRPD. And we saw how this brought about how the pandemic should respond even to persons with disabilities in issues of situations of humanitarian kind, risk situations where even as far as COVID pandemic was concerned, they needed to be put in the forefront as people who were intentionally reached out when responding to the treatment and the vaccinations around. Number 7 was on respect for law and focusing on eliminating stigma and discrimination. We know it is quite important for persons with disabilities to be able to access justice, and that model really empowered persons with disabilities to know how to go about eliminating stigma and discrimination with respect to the rule of law. We had an 8th module on youth and disability in collaboration with Commonwealth Children and Youth Disability Networks, because we know we cannot advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities majorly as a block, but we disaggregate some of these issues so that we take care of issues of children and youth the way they are supposed to be addressed at that level. So this was one of the models. There was also a model on inclusive education, which we found during the pandemic was quite important because education became an online platform where most persons with disabilities were unable to access such platforms because of their needs. Where the 10th module was on women and girls with disabilities, where we know that women are marginalized and their issues need to be also looked at separately so that they feel included in the sphere of environment and development as well as other people. We had an 11th module on anti-racism, equality, focusing on equality and respect for indigenous people and ethnic minority groups, where we are keen to show that even among persons with disabilities or disabled people, there are those minorities who also need to be brought to the fore so that their issues are also addressed equally. The 12th module was on data and disability. And that is quite key because we know without data, it is not possible to plan for what to intervene. So data and disability is quite key. And that model was helpful to show how this data should be done and how it should always be emphasized that disaggregated data on disability and issues of disability to come up during planning. The 13th model was building DPOs and focusing on campaigning and increasing our voices as DPOs. And that gave the participants a voice and capacity to form more DPOs and to form more groups so that their issues can be heard as one voice. And the last module was on influencing government. And this one looked at ways in which DPOs can be able to influence their governments at their levels so that governments can be able to put them into their programs and policies without leaving them behind.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Shall I do this last one for you because it's
okay.
All right. So for each module, there was a printed course book, which was between 25 and 30 pages, which was released the week before we focused on that online. People who were participating, you'll hear more about the participants, had a password protected area they could see all this material in. There were also follow-up activities that they could do then or after they'd seen the presentation, which also went out at the same time. Presentation for each module was about an hour, and it consisted of contributors from across the Commonwealth, PowerPoint lecture and film extracts that were relevant. So those two things went out a week beforehand. Then we had an interactive seminar run twice, so we could cover most time zones in the day, where there was new material put in, reinforcing the old material, and also interactive activities. And then the film and seminars were all captioned and signed in international sign language. And the PowerPoints also have audio version and descriptions. So all of that material is up on the website. You will hear more about at the moment. And those who wish to on this course could be accredited at 4 different levels, and we're still working through the work that they've sent in. We're not marking the work as if it was a university course or something like that. We're just making sure that they've understood the points, and for attending, people will get different levels of accreditation. That unfortunately will not be available when it goes online, but people can still do the activities. Thank you. Now over to you, Sarah, to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you, Richard. With us in this course, there are many speakers, but I want to introduce each one at the time of their speaking. And right now, I would like to introduce Lane Robinson, the Head of Policy Commonwealth Secretariat, who will now speak to us about the support and how it fits into the wider work of the Commonwealth. Welcome, Lane.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and for that overview presentation. And thank you for inviting the Secretariat to be a part of this session today. I'm working alongside you. The Commonwealth Secretariat and the Secretary General is quite pleased to have been associated with the capacity building sessions as you have described them. The proposal to do this capacity building program fit very neatly into our role as a Secretariat, which is to work to build the capacity of stakeholders to contribute to decision-making processes. As you know, the issues and challenges of DPOs are many and varied. But we believe that one of the ways we can begin to answer the challenges in that of the DPOs is through capacity building. And so the Commonwealth Secretariat, in partnership with others, including the others on this call who we'll hear from, agreed to invest in the capacity building of the DPOs because it's an essential, I think, criteria, our first step, if we are to begin to realize the kinds of policy changes we want to see. So we hope that, as we will hear today, that the process was inclusive. We hope that the process was effective, but there are plans to see how that could continue being rolled out into the future. We're also pleased today that the Commonwealth Peoples with Disabilities Forum, as we have received notice, been formally accredited to the Commonwealth Secretariat as an accredited organization in the last 2 weeks. And that sends a very positive message that we are serious about being inclusive in the Commonwealth and working to advance progress against the Commonwealth, the CRPD in the Commonwealth. There's a lot of work to do in the Commonwealth member states. There are different stages of development, but working alongside you, Sarah, and your team and the executive and the other stakeholders on the call, we believe we will see the kinds of change we want to see in partial fulfillment to these sustainable development goals. Once again, I just want to say congratulations to you, Sarah, and the team, and we look forward to our continued collaboration for the future as we work to strengthen disability rights in member states across the Commonwealth. Thank you very much, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lane, for your kind words and the encouragement even for us to move forward. We'll see how to partner more with the Commonwealth Secretariat and move CDPF forward. I would like now to introduce our second speaker, Diana Samarasan.
No, it's Richard Reeser.
Oh, okay. Sorry for that. Our second speaker is Richard Reeser, who will talk about the scope of the module and how the training, why the training, how the training was and why the training and its transformative thinking around the UNCRPD. Yeah. Welcome, Richard, to this.
Thank you very much. And I have given myself a little more time than others because I wanted to pull out maybe 5 or 6 key points that kept coming up through the course. And the course was really made, even people like me who've been around in the movement for nearly 40 years, to review and look at what were the really important learning points. And the first one, of course, is the transformative change, which is in the convention, but which came from the disabled people rights movement in the 70s and 80s, from us being seen as objects to which things were done, charity, or in many rural areas, things were done to us in terms of stigma and various other things. In the medical model, things were done to us to make us as normal as possible. And we were often segregated as a result of that, where we couldn't be made normal. That was all challenged in the convention. And instead, disabled people, people with disabilities, are the subjects of the convention with rights, who are capable of claiming those rights and making a decision for their lives. And we look back at the history of how that came about with the break in 1980 from Rehabilitation International, the setting up of DPI the following year in 1981, and 25 years on from them adopting this very clear social model, seeing the problem not being our impairments, which are our lack of function, physical, mental, psychosocial, but the barriers that are put towards us. And that, for a human rights organization and movement, 25 years to bring about that change is not a long time. If you think about the battles we are still having on racism, on women's equality and so on, that we haven't got this implemented everywhere, but it is at least on paper there, and now we need to work to it. I need to say something because of that thinking. We in this Commonwealth Disabled Peoples Forum take a different view on the language that used. We accept that the convention is called the Persons with Disabilities, but it doesn't make any sense if you take a social model approach to call us people with disabilities. And let me explain why. In the Commonwealth, we call ourselves disabled people because of the development of the social model of disability. In the 19th and 20th century, disabled persons' medical condition was thought to be the root cause of their exclusion from society, what we now call the medical or individual model. We use the social model where the barriers of environment, attitude and organisation are what disable people with impairments and lead to prejudice and discrimination. If one accepts that, then it's actually quite hard to actually call ourselves persons with disabilities, because it's to accept us as objects and powerless. Now, I'm sure the people who adopted this didn't mean that to be the case, but that is what it means in terms of the way that we actually model this. We also view ourselves as united by a common oppression, whether we are deaf, blind, deaf, or whether we have autism, whether we have learning difficulties, whether we have depression, anxiety, HIV, and a whole series of metabolic conditions. We are all people with different impairments who are treated unfairly in society because of barriers that are put up, and mainly attitudinal barriers. Therefore, it makes sense for us all to identify as disabled people. But when we're talking about the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, we're happy to use people or persons with disabilities. We're not so happy to change our name from disabled people's organisations to organisations of persons with disabilities, but that's another argument. Another thing that came up several times is how do we work with organisations that are not run by disabled people, but are doing things for us, such as Sight Savers, such as Leonard Cheshire, such as CBM, such as HI, Humanity and Inclusion, used to be Handicap International, and also Light for the World, to name 5 of the big organizations that are out there. None of these organizations are run by disabled people. They are not DPOs, they are NGOs, not non-governmental organizations. But we've seen over the period that a large number of them get funding because they have the wherewithal to dispose of those grants and so on. And what we haven't seen is a requisite growth in the number of disabled people employed, or indeed in the number of disabled people on their boards. They are not DPOs, which we define as having between 50 and 75% of their board or trust as disabled people. Therefore, they are allies and can be allies, but we have to ask questions in the field about how they operate. Do they accept the leadership and thinking of disabled people's organizations where they're working? Do they think everything they can, do they do everything they can to empower and build the capacity of DPOs? Often, DPOs are turned down because they say, well, you haven't got the capacity to hold a big grant and to make sure that there's no corruption and there's proper governance. Well, it's our view that NGOs and other bilateral and multinational organizations should be providing that support so that they do have that capacity and can hold a grant. Do they reject the charity and medical model in favor of the social human rights model? I think we'd say a tick for most of them on that. But do they put their organizational, financial and training resources at the disposal of disabled people and DPOs? Much less so. If the charity provides welfare services and treatment, do they still empower disabled people that they work with, or do they just give out treatment, eye tests and various other things? This is a wasted opportunity if they are not building and empowering the disabled people that they work with. Do they allow disabled people and their organizations to lead? Remember, nothing about us without us. Or are they stealing our clothes? And for us in Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum, the jury is certainly out on that. And we would like to see much more movement from the NGO sector to becoming proper allies of the disabled people's movement. It may not be the quickest solution, but it will be the most effective in terms of developing and really implementing the convention. Another thing that came up was health, with COVID coming up throughout the course, and you'll hear more about that in a minute from Sruti, and independence. So we had medical, quality healthcare, equipment, supplies, medicines need to be available, life quality resources such as personal assistance, accessible housing, transportation, funding and stability, social services, benefits, employment, community and family support. These things take time to develop among a risk population such as disabled people. So certainly for humanitarian situations such as COVID, which has shown up the cracks throughout our societies, we need to be prepared that just because we're coming possibly to the end or a plateau in the COVID doesn't mean we should stop preparing for the next big infection, the next big climatic problems and natural catastrophes. Change is definitely coming from climate change and environmental crisis and requires we start planning for these events now. For instance, Article 11 and the various articles of the SDGs. So that was a learning point that came throughout the course. We introduced a new set of thinking on racism. We analysed where racism had come from, and it came from the slave trade. Racism, by its barbarity and lack of humanity, creates impairment and reinforces disablism on those who survive. There is a higher level of disability amongst ex-slave populations. These especially affect peoples first. These colonialist positions as European expansion threaten them. North and South America, the Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, decolonization and equal rights is still an issue. Reparations were turned down at the 2001 World Conference on Racism. Perhaps they shouldn't have been, because the underdevelopment of many of these countries is as a result of the rich countries who got rich at the expense of these countries paying any reparations back. The forced mass movement of millions of slaves from Africa to the Americas resulted in a diaspora that left a lasting legacy of poverty, poor health and disablism. And the Black People Matter movement is based on that history. And it's really Black people matter, but everybody needs to deal with solutions to the problem. And it's not just an impact on where the slaves arrived, it's also the countries that were destabilized by the slave populations being taken from them in Africa. And then, of course, Beyond that, colonization driven by the ideas of racial superiority in the Indian subcontinent, much of sub-Saharan Africa, and other places where European powers colonized, left a legacy of poverty, racism, and disableism. We felt that was a very strong module. A lot of people to start with said, well, this hasn't got anything to do with us. We're a majority black country, but at the end of it, they realized that we all have to have common cause on these issues. The last one that was really important, it seems to me, coming from the course, we had a special module on women, but it came up over and over again through the course. Promoting gender equality and empowerment of women is an essential to the achievement of the internationally agreed Sustainable Development Goals and the UNCRPD, SDG 5 and UNCRPD 6, but of course it integrated throughout both treaties. Disabled women and girls experience multiple discrimination on the grounds of gender and on disability. This places them at a higher risk of gender-based violence, sexual abuse, neglect, maltreatment, exploitation, and often lack of access to education. Girls and women who are disabled are 2 to 4 times on the empirical studies that have been done as affected as non-disabled women and girls, as well as their literacy rates being much lower. Discrimination, we found, is more compounded and aggravated for disabled women and girls, and there is insufficient participation of disabled women in decision-making processes of public life. We had a strong group of women from our executive who put the module together and delivered it, and they will show leadership in taking us forward to do much more work on this. So that's me now. I think it's now over to Shruti. Perhaps you'd like to introduce her, Sarah.
Thank you, Richard, for those details about the course. Very important for others' understanding. And right now, I'd like to call upon Dr. Shruti Mohapatra, who is our acting vice chair in CDPF and Odisha, India, to come and give us an overview on how we presented COVID-19 pandemic and disabled people. Welcome, Shruti. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sarah.
4 minutes.
Good evening and namaste from India.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk about how we presented the COVID-19 pandemic and disabled people to the participants of this training program. We focused on the virus, its impact, humanitarian responses, the gaps that were there, and how we are going to rebuild economy in a sustainable and inclusive manner. Our focus was the participants very clearly understand what is COVID-19 and what is the coronavirus disease, and that it comes in waves. Nobody was aware that after first wave, there would be a second, there would be a third. So now scientists have come to the conclusion that it is here to stay. So when it is here to stay, then our policies and our policy environment has to consider that from the perspective of those with disability. It also has to, the participants need to understand about variants and how this variant is mutating, fast mutating variants are coming up, causing more severe diseases. Next, please. And the humanitarian responses, we found that, you see, this pandemic brought to the fore that there are many gaps and many fissures in all approaches to people with disabilities, not just in a country or 2 countries, but across the globe. So humanitarian responses have to be crafted in a more thoughtful manner. Now, next, please. Next, please.
Yeah,
and then while presenting COVID-19 pandemic, we also talked and emphasized on the characteristic of this category of population. It is very, very important for policymakers, governments, and civil society to understand that this is a huge population, heterogeneous population. It is impacted more than others due to attitudinal, environmental, and institutional barriers. It is most underprivileged, poorest, and it's a high-risk population. Hence, specific planning is needed. Inclusive planning, taking people with disability, taking the disabled people on board is necessary. Next, please. We also talked about during the training module, the areas of the lives of the disabled that is impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically focused on health and well-being, care and support, livelihood, vulnerability to the disease. You see, vulnerability to coronavirus is difficult to understand for others. For example, generally policymakers design a response which is one coat size fits all. But when we move from the eyes to the ears to the limbs, the entire spectrum changes. The disability, its reasonable accommodations needed, its functional impact, everything changes. So that we are those who are unable to see, those who are unable to hear, those who are unable to move independently, how vulnerable they are as they are dependent on others was highlighted. Mental health issues, access to information, that which everyone takes for granted, access to information, is so difficult for huge sections of the disabled people, was spelled out very clearly. Education, or rather the disadvantage that we suffered from. Overnight, world became digital from physical in education, and the gap that was already existing for those children with disabilities, it became even larger because no considerations were put into place as to create accessibility, to provide reasonable accommodations, and to prepare the children and their families living in underprivileged and poor areas how to cope up with a digital world. And increased domestic abuse for children and for women was also explained very clearly, because this is a concept of CRPD we all need to understand. It is an intersectional issue. Next. So how we presented our training program, we just did not talk about it. They were not only lectures in some slides and presentations, but we used a lot of well-researched text, data and statistics, figures, infographics and pictures. We used audio and video material, newspaper and other media clips, and 1 or 2 newspaper clips are here for you to see. We gave them a lot of assignments and coursework, and we had seminars. We referred to international laws, policies, and conventions so that the participants could understand the existing framework now. And the case studies were shared and way forward was discussed. So this training program was in itself a complete holistic package for the DPOs, for the disability activists, and for the young people to understand the nuances, the scope, and the reach and the concerns of the issue, and how when people with disabilities are not taken into consideration, development falls back for everybody. Then we also talked about building back better, because the post-COVID world is an opportunity for the world and for the disabled people to create a better, more sustainable, and more inclusive future. So we train the participants to understand population size, to take local geography and economy into consideration while planning anything. And we emphasize the fact that government, whether it is a union government, federal government, or whatever, and the state governments, they must always refer to existing international guidance on disability inclusion, laws, and all the existing conventions and local laws. Like in India, we have the RPWD Act to make emergency and humanitarian response policies and guidelines. Thank you so much.
You're going to stop there?
So, yes, this is, we just highlighting again that the future has to be accessible, inclusive, and sustainable. And for that, all persons with disabilities must be included in the preparation for any national, international emergency and pandemic. And short-term goals like financial packages to all women with disabilities, or accessible internet and smartphones for students with disabilities, they must be given equal priority to long-term plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're now going to look at some of the participants in the course did a short vox pops to us. It's not professional in any ways, but I think it's quite interesting to get their feedback, which we did on the last bit of session 14. And this is a compilation that we've put together. So here we go.
What I've really enjoyed about this course is the chance to study not only the UNCRPD in depth, but also to learn and understand about the Sustainable Development Goals, because they haven't really been a direct focus here in New Zealand. And I also really enjoyed, again from Module 2, the history behind the UNCRPD, you know, the formal and informal negotiations and what went on, and also the fact that stakeholders for the first time had direct input. So it was very, very good to come to that. And I guess the final thing I would say is, you know, this course is more than just a basic course. You know, it has quite a bit of intellectual rigor to it if you want to go through all the modules and do all the work. But I mean, I for one really appreciated that, and getting a bit of an understanding about how things are in other countries, because it's vastly different to here.
I'm so happy to participate in this training because it has taught me a lot of things. I'm an author and a civil servant. Some of the things that I don't know about disability, I was exposed in this thing.
I'm Favor Ajara from Nigeria, and I really want to thank CDPF for coming up with this training. It's really an interesting time to learn more and also to know more about issues surrounding disability in Africa. It's actually a great opportunity. And I also learned more about disabled women, especially their rights. Knowing for what I use what I learned for it, I'll go back to my organization and advocate and see how to liaise with federal government to.
So it was nice to really hearing to know the lot of things about the disability sector, and it will be help our to work in future to develop the disability capacity, build up and leadership among this world, and in working with the government and DPO.
Patience Ubulu Dixon. I happen to be in the forefront of disability advocacy. This course has really brought to the fore a lot of things that I had to really clarify about instruments, international treaties, DPOs, how we work, how we need to work, and how we should actually make our voice stronger and also with our government.
Many thanks to Richard and his team. It's a very excellent initiatives. It throws light on what kind of development activities take place across the globe, especially with reference to Commonwealth countries. It's really enlightening me and many of us, the various advocacy initiatives taken from worldwide. All grateful to you for these great initiatives. We need to have some kind of follow-up program for having a network with this international organization for effective implementation of advocacy work in India.
One of the things that I liked about this course was the fact that I was able to learn from other DPOs or from other disabled people from other countries to hear what have happened in their country and what worked. And this will help in terms of what we're going to do back here in Nigeria as well. For the future, I also want to see collaboration between DPOs across countries. I don't think this is something we've done before, but I would want to see collaboration across countries, people on this platform that have joined this group.
So good afternoon, I am Jessica Jacobi from St. Lucia, and I would like to first commend the CDPF for developing and presenting such an insightful course. There's so much information. I cannot pinpoint one module that really stood out for me, because all of the information is information that we can continue to use as advocates to be able to better the lives of persons with disabilities. And I'm looking forward to not only just coming to the end of this course, but being able to network with other persons, to be able to know what they are doing, and to see how we can work with each other to make the world better for persons with disabilities generally.
And I'm encouraged to start training within my communities so that I may empower disabled people in my community. Thank you so much for this powerful training.
Okay, I am Berndina Egg from Belize, Central America. Being a part of the CDPF Disability Etiquette Equality course has equipped me with the knowledge, attitudes, and skills that I need to be a stronger and more effective advocate for disabled Belizeans. Modules 6 and 7 resonated most with me, connecting the history of slavery with the issues that disabled people face is one aspect of sociology that is often overlooked. Racism compounded with the current decline of the natural environment and inaccessible infrastructure that disabled people have to cope with makes it even more challenging for disabled people to attain equality.
But hi, my name is Ndifreke Andrew Essian. My name is Freki, and I'm from Nigeria. And I'm very grateful to have been chosen to participate in this online course. Right from the first module, given my ability to stay through for 14 modules and 15 weeks, learning about different key issues. I also saw that the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is very crucial if you're advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities. And one of them was disability and racism. You see, I'm Nigerian and we are Black. So I was like, yes, racism and disability, how does that concern me? But thank God I was able to sit and listen, because I did learn that when there are issues like racism or different movements, it is important for disability actors to join the conversation so that they can bring the disability component to any conversation.
I really love the course. I really love all the information I was given. I think your presenters were good at their presentation. I think it was well done. I think the host did a good job. And for me, the vast amount of information was good.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Chiloda Obutipuri, and I am from Bangladesh. I have Yaniki Mermaid. My may not clear. So I would like to thank you for this opportunity. So this online course is so informative. I learned a lot from this module, all module, and I like the both module number 9, inclusive education. This inclusive education reminds me of my childhood. I have faced a lot of challenges.
Your knowledge that you've given me has enabled me to be a global facilitator based on the legal framework, the first model, the second one, and the model that was talking about women and girls with disabilities. SDGs, there was a model on SDG number 8, number 10. This has really helped me to articulate issues of disability.
I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity this course. I really enjoyed it and met new people in the world. I love to learn about disability equality, made me a passion. Hopefully I can become part job for support for disabled people in the future.
I think now it's over to Gemma. Gemma White, who we owe a great debt to, who held all the administration of this course together, but I think it's only right that she should have a little say about the whole course. So Gemma.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody. So my role on this course has really been in the background rather than presenting, so you can tell I'm not used to it and my face has gone very red. But it's been a real pleasure to be involved at all. I've just loved every moment of it. But anyway, that's enough of that. So I'm just going to start by talking about the people that we had on the course and where they came from and how we got them. The CDPF has 85 disabled people's organisations from 47 countries, and they were all asked to circulate the information. So they did that, and we got applicants from over 424 disabled people, also from 50 non-disabled allies, and from 4 non-Commonwealth countries. So we were thinking that we wanted to have as many people as possible to do the course. We wanted to let everybody join, because the amount of work that they that the possibility to do, you could do it at any kind of level, really. You could dip in, you could just come to the Zoom seminars, you could engage at any level. So we thought, well, if we let everybody in, they can engage at whatever they like, because we were thinking, well, we'll need to assess the work that comes in, but we thought, well, let's see if we can have them all in, and we did. So we had about 160 people who were kind of active on the seminars every week, which is great. So we enrolled 428 students, including 4 non-disabled people, because they were from countries that hadn't had representation so heavily. For instance, there was only 1 disabled person from Mozambique, so we let a non-disabled person come from there. Also from St Kitts and Nevis, St Vincent and the Grenadines. But the people from all the Commonwealth countries that were on the course came from, and I don't think this is all of them, but this is many of the countries: Nigeria, India, South Africa, Bangladesh, Kenya, Zambia, Ghana, Malawi, Canada, Sri Lanka, New Zealand, the UK, Malaysia, Uganda, Tanzania, Namibia, I'm nearly there, Susan, Lesotho, Eswatini, Jamaica, Belize, Dominica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Gambia, and there's obviously others as well. 59% of the applicants identified as being 35 or under. Identified, I say we didn't have proof, they said they were 35 or under, and 54% identified as female. So that was our goal, really, to have majority of young people and women. Next slide, please, Richard. We did a survey halfway through and also one at the end. More people submitted at the first survey, but we added them together and did averages. And we asked for their overall sort of experience of various elements. So of the course books, presentations, seminars, accessibility and administration, those sort of scores averaged between 8 and 8.6. So we were really pleased. And we also asked them to sort of score their experience of each module. And the highest scoring module was inclusive education, which average scored 9. It was incredible. There was a few 7s and there was lots of 10s. So we were really pleased with that. Next slide, please, Richard. Okay, so you've heard lots of comments from the video, but also some other comments that were written on the survey. There was opportunity for people to write comments. Was that it was interactive and interesting. That there was a lot of information per module. Some people found it almost too much. That we needed more time overall and more time between seminars. Not everybody agreed with that, but that was what some people thought. During the seminars, they thought we needed more time for discussion and more room for questions. So that's something to take on board for future courses. That they would like a virtual platform for group discussion and support. And that's something that we'd like to think about. People said that their knowledge of other disabled people in other countries has increased tremendously, and that it was a huge resource of knowledge gained, and that they would use to advance the advocacy work and programs to protect and promote the rights of disabled people. That was really good to read that one. Next and last slide, please, Richard. So our sort of thoughts about going forward, that I think we should have a platform for group support for people to kind of comment and help each other, particularly on the work that they want to put in. We'd like, I would probably be a bit better about having more people to help me respond to queries and provide support, because I had a lot of emails come in from a lot of people. Obviously, eventually we'd like to do it in other languages. And I think most importantly, we'd like to have a kind of pre-course course. So like on how to use Zoom, how to access the materials from the website, how to get on the website, and various other kind of technical things. I was surprised about how little some people had experience about accessing Zoom sort of seminars and stuff. So when I was letting people in, I was having to be aware that they didn't necessarily have their video on, or they were on mute, or there's quite a lot of sort of backroom stuff to do with that. And I think as much as we could have helped them, I think we'd like to have done that. But as I said at the beginning, it was an absolute privilege to be involved, and I've loved every moment of it. It's completely kind of taken me over for the last few months, and now I really miss it. But anyway, thank you everybody.
Thank you, Jenny. Okay, back to Sarah to introduce the next speaker, which is, I think, Diana. Sarah.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, thanks, Gemma and the other presenters for the insightful comments and issues that have been discussed even during the training. I'd like now to introduce Diana Samasaran from the DRF, who supported CDPF on this course and its delivery, for her to come and tell us how important capacity building of these POs is. So Diana, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Sarah. And thanks to Richard as well for the invitation to speak here. Good morning, everyone. I'm the founding executive director of the Disability Rights Fund and the Disability Rights Advocacy Fund. And we're participatory grant makers and collaborations between donors and the global disability movement, and we are funding organizations of persons with disabilities in Africa, Asia, Pacific, and Caribbean. DRF is honored to be the donor that, with funding from the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office of the UK, has been able to support CDPF since its relaunch in 2019, including funding of this critical online disability equality training. As a representative organization for organizations of disabled people across the 54 Commonwealth countries, CDPF is an essential mechanism to raise the voices and support the participation of 450 million disabled people in the Commonwealth across all the functions of the Commonwealth. Even before the current pandemic, which has, as we all know, severely affected disabled people around the world, growing wealth and power inequality, as well as growing restrictions on civil society, have dampened the achievement of the CRPD and made inclusion of disabled people in achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals difficult. What has been achieved, though, has largely been the result of activism, passion, and advocacy by the disability movement at grassroots, national, regional, and global levels around the world. But this activism needs support that is not only financial, but also technical, and support which brings activists with disabilities together to learn from and with each other and to build stronger joint messages and joint advocacy goals. As the pandemic was beginning last year, the CDPF, which, as Richard noted earlier, had planned to have a large meeting at the Commonwealth Heads of Government in Rwanda, had to make some hard choices and some quick pivots. Instead of investing in face-to-face meetings, to its credit, CDPF decided instead to invest in this online disability equality training, which has reached nearly 500 disabled people across 41 Commonwealth countries. This reach and the learning and networking that came with the training are perhaps a silver lining of the pandemic. with online meetings like this one today, there are no or minimal travel costs and more people from more places can attend. Of course, there are gaps in access to the technology that enables us to connect. And as Gemma was just saying, we need to address those digital access gaps. I really like the idea of a pre-course on Zoom, and DRF has some tools for that pre-course already. So look on our website. The Disability Rights Fund and our sister Disability Rights Advocacy Fund, which have been funding organizations of persons with disabilities across the Global South since 2008, 14 years ago, can underscore the importance of technical assistance like this disability equality training, and also organizational capacity building. We've long had three main strategies: grant making, technical assistance, and advocacy, especially for increased resources for disabled people. During the pandemic, we also added support for organizational capacity building to address areas of risk, such as safeguarding and financial management. And this year, we've added core support so organizations of persons with disabilities do not have to scramble to simply exist. As a participatory grant maker with disabled people in our governance, on our grant making committee, and as our staff, we have listened and heard the demand for support across all of these areas. We're very glad to partner with CDPF to increase the reach of our focus on technical assistance and capacity building to more representative organizations of persons with disabilities across more countries. And we urge other donors to step up their support as well. Funding CDPF and organizations of persons with disabilities recognizes that people with disabilities themselves are the experts who can help us build forward better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for telling us about DRF, and we thank you even for the support that DRF has given to CDPF. I would like now to call upon Harriet Knowles, UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office Capacity Building Program, to take the floor to speak to us about why UK government FCO supports the meeting and has been part and parcel of the course that we've been having. Welcome, Harriet.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you very much, Richard. It's been such an interesting meeting so far, and just really enjoyed hearing all of the feedback from the course participants, showing how much the course was valued. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And just to say, kind of echoing a lot of Diana's words as well, that the UK government really recognises the importance of empowering activists with disabilities to enact change in their communities. And we too recognise that people with disabilities are best placed to advocate and inform others about disability issues. But we also recognise that there are some operative and tools like the CDPF training are really support the way that the CDPF training touches on gender, race and youth, and how these factors can compound marginalisation. As this will foster more intersectional as well. And we're really interested going forward on how the power of technology can be used to train people with disabilities through virtual means, recognising some of the challenges. And we also really support the recognition of the importance of open source tools that are available to all, and sharing our tools amongst other practitioners in this space, and with other communities as well, to make sure that we can amplify each other's successes and amplify and share tools that we've found helpful as well. I think during the pandemic, we've definitely recognised that the COVID-19 has had abilities to operate And it's more important than ever that we support the capacity of OPDs to help us plan responses to COVID-19, but also further crises that might be down the road. And I think others have touched on the importance of involving OPDs in crisis response. Some of the work that the FCDO is funding in this area includes our programme, the Disability Capacity Building Programme, which funds the Disability Rights Fund, International Disability Alliance, UNDIS, PRPD, and Sightsavers. And the aim of this programme is to support the leadership of DPOs and effect CRPD compliant change at the local, national, and global level via the participation of APDs. We were really pleased. Some examples of the work that we deliver through this programme include our support to the International Disability Alliance to conduct some consultations ahead of the Global Disability Summit in Norway, which will ensure the priorities of the movement are heard. And as Diana just touched on, we also support DRS participatory grant making process. And we've also seen a lot of positive results through that work, including OPDs really taking the lead in lobbying for an inclusive COVID-19 response. Additional to this, we also are really working within the FCDO to encourage all of our programmes to recognise the important role that OPDs play. Also touching on some of the things that Richard mentioned earlier about the relationship with INGOs and OPDs and how we can make that relationship really meaningful. And we encourage all of our programmes to involve OPDs or DPOs in implementation, in monitoring, and delivery of the programmes, of all of our programmes across our portfolio. But there's lots of training will really help build the capacity of DPOs, and we're really excited to see how it develops, and excited to promote it as well within our network. So thank you very much for holding the meeting today, and for see how much hard work has gone into it. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for your insights there. We are happy to also be partners and networking with you to move CDPF to the next level, and we hope that moving forward we shall continue interacting and working together to move to the next level of our trainings and any other support that CDPF requires. I would like now to also call upon our next speaker, Amber Salelka from the International Disability Alliance Capacity Building Unit, who is also a course sponsor and of this meeting, to speak about capacity building and what IDA's experience is and their thoughts forward. Thank you. The floor, Amber, is yours now. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for welcoming us to this very interesting and enriching event. Capacity building for persons with disabilities is something that we hold at the core of the International Disability Alliance. And it's something that we look upon more as an overall holistic approach rather than looking at one-off training. Capacity building to us is a means of addressing historical deprivations and barriers to participation which have been experienced by persons with disabilities. This is not just a question of knowledge and of acquiring information, but it's also barriers to accessing social capital, for example. Even where people with disabilities have had access to education, many of my peers have not had access to, say, higher education or extra and co-curricular activities, which are avenues to learn more about the world and oneself, and also to build skills of leadership and informed decision-making, for instance. I am the BRIDGE CRPD SDGs officer under the Capacity Building Unit of the International Disability Alliance. The BRIDGE CRPD SDGs is a joint training initiative by IDA and the International Disability and Development Consortium. It was initiated in 2015. It is a training of 2 modules, each is of 7 days. This is an in-person training, and there's a strong emphasis in the training itself and the planning on mentorship and following the trajectory of participants after they finish the training. For example, their role or their experiences within the larger IDA community of practice, which they become a part of. Bridge trainings are organized at the regional and national level through IDA member organizations. I am displaying an infographic on the screen, which tells you that 905 people have been involved in the initiative till date. We also have some links in the chat box where you can learn more about the initiative. Thanks, Dorothy. Of these, there have been 388 participants, 126 facilitators, and 334 support persons. A diverse facilitation team, which is designed to facilitate individualized attention for participants towards their full and effective participation, is very important in this process. When we say that this training is open to all persons with disabilities, we mean all. 45% of our participants have been from underrepresented groups. And what we mean by underrepresented groups is probably the people with disabilities who you don't typically see sitting next to you in a training context. The principle of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities are reflected in the bridge quality criteria that governs the organization of bridge cycles and selection of participants. This initiative has been externally audited in 2020 and has been highlighted as a best practice in inclusion. This has made a huge difference. The existence of this training initiative has made a huge difference for OPDs and their approaches to capacity building as well. We know that many OPDs and INGOs have been putting in specific requests to funders for holding bridge trainings in their countries and in their context. Experiencing a bridge training initiative, a bridge training has confirmed a suspicion that many of us had, that the only way to get marginalized people with disabilities into capacity building initiatives was to change the way we envisage capacity building initiatives for people with disabilities. And this includes in terms of investment. And the inclusive facilitation that is practiced in Bridge is a huge part of this. We believe that the 905 people who were involved in the initiative have all built their capacity in the course of the training. For example, illustrators that we work with to promote the participation of autistic participants or participants with learning disabilities come away from the training with more rights-based approaches on how to depict persons with disabilities and their situational realities. When we had to shift online, thanks to COVID, it meant a pause in the hosting of bridge cycles, but we also had the opportunity to take our rich learnings and our resources in inclusive facilitation online to develop our own online training platform. This process has taken a while, but it involved a participatory procurement process, which involved our members auditing a number of online learning management systems, including our members who represent underrepresented groups. We also have Bridge alumni based in the Global South learning about developing online modules and taking leadership on developing modules themselves using materials which are appropriate in the cultural context. We do believe, however, that for many particularly underrepresented persons with disabilities, the impact of in-person trainings cannot be overemphasized. So bridge trainings are beginning again, slowly, steadily at the national level. We do look forward to learning from the success stories of the Commonwealth Disabled People's Forum online training as well learned today. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Amber from IDA, for telling us more about the bridge training. And we look forward even for more members of DPOs, OPDs, accessing that training for building their capacity even more. I would like to pose this question to each one of you, IDA, DRF, and UK Foreign Commonwealth. Maybe you give us your insights on how do we build DPO's capacity and understanding of the paradigm shift from individual medical model thinking to social human rights model of thinking. I'll give each one of you an opportunity to respond to that Then we go to the second question.
Well, I think, Chair, I think we won't have time for that. We've got about 3 minutes left, so let's have a response from everybody.
Okay. And the second question is, with at least 1.3 billion disabled people or with disabilities in the world, how can we make use of modern media to improve their understanding of their rights? If you can share quickly, then we'll be happy. Anyone can start by taking the floor. Amber?
Sure. I think the first question about building capacity and understanding the paradigm shift is very important. I think that it is something which can be achieved through capacity building, and the way we design modules which are receptive of people's realities to really understand how that shift is taking place. I think the second question on modern media to improve understanding of rights is a really great question. I think one of the concerns is really trying to look at accessibility within that. We know, like, for example, podcasts are super popular, but they're not accessible to deaf people, and transcripts aren't exactly friendly either. So we need to look at ways in which we can come up with different, sort of different ways or formats in which the same information can be conveyed for a larger number of, to reflect a large diversity of persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think, yes, Diana?
I know we're out of time, so I would just urge everyone to look at our website, www.disabilityrightsfund.org. There is a lot of information there and resources for in response to these questions about media, as well as capacity to use the rights model. So thank you very much for all of the work here.
Sarah, can I just draw attention to the last slide?
Yes, you can, Richard.
From today, all the materials that we produced can be found free access on our website. We would just ask people to tell us how they're using them, would be very useful. The people on the call who are not yet their organization's members within the Commonwealth, please join. And that tells you how to do it. There's also, for people who are activists who are in the Commonwealth and want to become individual human rights advocates, there's in the membership section, they can also find a form. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part in this. As always, time has beaten us, but thank you very much. Sarah, last word. I think we're out.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you, everyone, for your active participation. We hope to see you out there as champions of disability because of the capacity that has been built. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.